Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour for 2022, where I am creating a visual record of all the books currently in my possession, with digressions now and again for books that aren't currently in my possession, but that once were. These are not just random pictures, these are scans of book covers that I had once upon a time and don't have anymore. I thought we'd go through a few more of those while I'm still sorting out the little book room. We started our library tour in my little book room, and in the course of those videos, I encountered many problems. Doubles and triples of books, books that don't belong in there, books that I don't want. Even in my Sanctum Sanctorum, I encountered many examples of that, so that room has to be redressed from the ground up. And if I don't do it with it all fresh in my mind, I'm certainly not going to do it after I've gone over every other book that's here. So I'm pausing the library tour, and I thought I'd fill the gap with the Library of the Lost, which I didn't do yesterday, and I heard a whole bunch about that from people who emailed me. Hey, feel free to email me. My email is on every video. You can feel free to email me about any subject at all with the standard cautions. Number one is that if you send me a 5,000-word email, my brain is automatically going to categorize it as work, and I'm probably not going to get to it. I'm going to slot it into work, and once it slots into work instead of personal stuff, then it has to survive on work metrics. And one of those metrics is, what is the money for this? What is the check for this? And of course, if you write me a 5,000-word email, you are not offering to pay me to respond. And you are definitely, if you're the type to send me a 5,000-word email, you're the type who will get huffy and offended if I send you a 3-line response. You want 5,000 words in response, and we both know that. That decreases the chances that I will respond. And the other standard caution about the email that I leave on every video, that email is to my inbox. It's not a dummy email. It's not an email I check every month or every year or whatever. I've seen examples of that kind of crap, and so have you, but I'm not doing it. It's an email to me, for me to sort through and respond to as fast as I can. And the only reason that you know to email me at all is because I have asked you to do that. I'm a lonely old shut-in. I want your emails, and I have asked you to do that in these videos, which means you are certainly seeing that email. All right? I'm not some YouTuber who is zealously guarding his privacy, and so you have to fish around for a way to contact me. You are seeing the email I want you to use. If, having seen that email and heard me say this, you go out of your way to use a different email, there are a bunch of other emails connecting to me online. If you go out of your way to use some other email to do that, to send me an email, I am going to ignore your message. You are literally wasting your time. I'm not going to write back to you and say, please don't use this email. I used to do that for a while. Then I realized, no, you're inviting people to email you, and you're leaving the email that you want in their plain view. If they don't use it, they don't deserve an explanation or a reprimand of any kind. You're not going to get any response at all if you do that. No matter how urgent the question is, I'm simply going to delete it. The minute I see what it is, I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to read the rest of it. But that having been said, a great number of you, it could be more. You never write, you never call. It could be more. But a great number of you email me when things are on your mind. And I heard from a great number of people yesterday telling me, pointing out to me gently, that I did not make a library tour yesterday. And I had to respond to a lot of those people, you know who you are, saying, well, I did make 5 videos yesterday, and nobody else does that online at all. Well, not just in BookTube, but anywhere. Nobody does that. I made 5 videos, and I decided, well, there are a couple of things I haven't done today, but I'll cut it off at 5 videos. And they weren't 5-minute videos either. Some of them were quite long. It didn't seem to work. That gentle clarification did not seem to work. People still wanted a library tour and everything else. So we're going to go through a few more books in the Library of the Lost today. I have them all queued up on the iPad. And the first one is a Harlequin romance, a category romance. Although I don't think I have I think I cut the category banner off this thing. Sarah at the Bookish Knitter would probably know what category this came from a long time ago, but I don't anymore. This is by Melinda Curtis. I've read a couple of books by Melinda Curtis, and I haven't really liked them. That's probably why I don't have this one. And it has a photo cover. It's called Getting Married Again. The motto being 9 months later, and as you can see, there's that romance cover model again. The male model there, I know his face. I have seen him on countless romance covers, but I do not know his name. I have never been able to identify this model. He doesn't do work anymore, but he did for a long time in, like, for instance, the late 90s and the aughts. And this, I vaguely remember this being about exactly what the cover would lead you to suspect, that it's kind of an attempt by this strain of books to merge pregnancy with romance in a way that makes my Boston Irish Catholic soul just squirm. But I seem to remember it also being a little bit on the heartwarming side. So, but I doubt that I would get it again. My taste in contemporary romances, it's not as adventurous, and it's starting to codify in a way that I should probably fight. Then this next one, I believe, was a UK mass market. I used to hoover them up. I still have goo-goo eyes for them because I love UK paperbacks. I just think they're something about the workmanship. I just like them better than American paperbacks. This is by Anthony Price, and it was a thriller called Gunner Kelly. Almost certain that this was a mass market paperback and that I got it and read it, but wasn't really in the mood for a thriller. I seem to remember it being action-packed in the final act and well done, but it didn't sing out to me in a way that would make Anthony Price be an author on my list. That sort of thing. Then this next one, this next thing, I scanned it, but I scanned a box set. I had a box set of mass market paperbacks. I imagine that this box set, this same thing, I probably paid 50 cents for it. I imagine that now it's enormously expensive on eBay or sites like that. This is a box set of the Bantam mass market paperbacks of the last complete translated set of Herman Hesse. So here you have everything. Beneath the Wheel, which is the one that I know the least. Narcissus and Goldman, Majesty. You have Steppenwolf, of course, and Siddhartha. A lot of these things, Siddhartha and Damien, were taught in schools. They were assigned in schools for a little while there. And I had these as a box set once upon a time. I love box sets. I don't know why I would get rid of this, but I checked, and I don't still have this. And these were serviceable translations. They were pretty good. I would very much like a reassessment of this author. I think he might be better than I remember. And for that reassessment, naturally being the pampered darling that I am, I want some publisher to come out with a new set of translations and send them to me for free, for review. And that, as far as I know, that hasn't happened in the American market. Then we have another romance novel. This is by Deborah Cook. This one I like considerably more, although it's a supernatural romance, which they don't always do it for me. In a way that I'm sure, I know they're very popular, but the problem with them for me is that I come to science fiction or fantasy romances from science fiction and fantasy, not the other way around. And the problem with science fiction and fantasy romances is that the main characteristic of science fiction and fantasy itself, which is intelligent, internally consistent world building, is almost always very absent. And I don't remember that being quite so much of a problem with this series. This is Kiss of Fate. That is our hero on the cover there in his human guise. But this is a series of books. I haven't read them all. I think I've read one other aside from this one. It's a series of books about dragon shapeshifters. So super hot guys who are actually dragons. and I remember liking the character building in here. I like the romance elements. I especially like the one element in this kind of supernatural romance is always the thread of discovery. The young woman discovers that the man's hidden secret. And sometimes that's handled better than other times. The problem I have with it was the internally consistent world building, because the characters are part of an entire species, and they don't act it. There's no sense of that at all. Almost no sense of that at all. They seem like just humans who have this weird ability. I know that's probably asking a lot for a romance author. Probably that it's certainly not in their top 10 list of priorities, but it always bothers me, which is why I tend to skirt away from supernatural romance. Then we have, this was a huge debut at the time that it came out. This is David Schickler, Kissing in Manhattan. Just absolutely classic New York fiction, the type of thing that at the time that this book came out about 40 years ago. At the time that this book came out, it was guaranteed to get you the notice of a serious agent, and almost certainly guaranteed to get you a book contract with one of the big 5 publishing companies, and it still is. If you write self-absorbed, drug-laced trifles about nothing, conflicts over nothing, upper middle class Connecticut divorce lurking out in the suburbs, if you write a novel like that about absolute navel-gazing 20-somethings, you will get the attention of the publishing world. And this thing was lauded to the skies. It was inescapable for 2 weeks in the critical world, and I didn't think that much of it. We've seen on the Library of the Lost and on my library tour, we've seen a number of debuts that I thought were much stronger than this one. This is a perfect example, being that if I saw it, I wouldn't get it. If I found it for 25 cents at a thrift shop, I would not buy it. Okay, this next one is it's a trifle by a major dude bro author. The author is Joseph McElroy, the author of Women and Men. And this is a much smaller book than that, and much less daring and much less accomplished. This is The Letter Left to Me. Very nice cover. I had a trade paperback of this that I scanned. And this is when I mention Dude Bro Lit, automatically a small menu of preoccupations is going to pop to your mind, and they will all be right. One preoccupation, one of the signature hallmark preoccupations of Dude Bro Lit, is that women are viewed not only as not human, but as they're an alien species. In other words, they're not human. They just happen to look human. Not only that, but that also among the alien species, they are a lesser, bumbling kind of species, something that you might have for like a house elf. But not anything formidable except in how dangerous they can be, but not how complicated they can be. They certainly can't be real people. And most Dude Bro authors prefer to just have them missing. Just omit them completely, or make them into vengeful angels or vengeful saint archetypes, but no complexity, nothing like the male characters. That is one hallmark of this kind of writing, but another hallmark of this kind of writing is an absolute fixation on the author's crappy relationship with their father. The reader's crappy relationship with their father, dodgy relationship with their father, complicated relationship with their father. It always crops up, always, in Dude Bro moments of any kind, not just in literature, but in film. Always, that element always crops up. I laughed my head off at the Oscars, the ceremony that you all want me to talk about. One of the moments that nobody's talking about is that Hans Zimmer won an award for his score for the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. And the scene that was shown at the Oscars has become an absolutely totemic scene in Dude Bro circles. In Dude Bro cinema circles, you have people routinely and totally unironically calling it the greatest scene in the history of cinema. And that is, there's a climactic scene where the Flash, played by Ezra Miller for the very last time, merges with the Speed Force, and is able, therefore, to personally reverse the course of time in order to save his teammates from the defeat that he consigned them to by being a screw-up in the first place. And it's an operatic scene. I don't deny that it's totally effective as a scene, but it's quintessential Dude Bro. And you can tell that because, okay, Darkseid is about to invade the world, and his parademons are at the ready, and the whole of the reality of all these characters is about to come crashing down, and they've all died in a gigantic subatomic explosion, and everyone else that doesn't die is going to become slave forever, their children for all their generations. But when the Flash enters the Speed Force in order to make a heroic attempt to reverse all that, what's the first thing he says? Literally the first word out of his mouth in the Speed Force. Dad. And he proceeds to talk to his father, to justify himself to his father because of their dodgy relationship. And that is true in this book too. This book, it's thin, it's poorly done, and it is the story of the main character's father, who leaves him a letter reflecting on all sorts of things, including something of a MacGuffin of a plot. But ultimately, the letters, the reminiscences, the back porch tobacco sessions are all about how the person leaving the message had a dodgy relationship with his father. They're always about that. It's just a little bit. I mean, I guess I should be more angry at it than I am, since it's led to a whole bunch of readers to abandon reading in favor of fetishizing. There's a gigantic corner of the active reading world that now considers there to be, in the entire history of the world, from the law code of Hammurabi all the way to the present day, only 2 books that have ever existed. McElroy's Women and Men does not exist. Gravity's Rainbow does not exist. There's only 2 books that exist in that entire time of human history with writing, and they are the 2 unnamed books that Cormac McCarthy is allegedly coming out with later this year. It's all they think about. It's all they care about. I've heard from, since that news was announced, I've heard from 3 different young women in 2 different continents, so they don't know each other, saying that they are seriously considering breaking up with their boyfriend because it's literally all their boyfriend will talk about. Did you get eggs when you were doing the grocery shopping today? I'm just wondering what those novels are going to be like. I mean, what are they going to... Okay, I know you're wondering about that. You talked about that literally all night long last night. I'm asking you to change the subject for a minute and talk about the grocery shopping so that I know what to pick up on my way home if you didn't do it. Did you get eggs when you were grocery shopping? I'm just... Are they going to be some sort of thematic continuation? They're seriously considering breaking up with their boyfriends over these 2 books. But anyway, I don't recommend The Letter Left to Me. I don't recommend. I do recommend Women and Men, but I don't recommend. So let's just move on from the subject. Then we have Robert Lacey's book. This sold a gazillion copies. This is Majesty. His look at Queen Elizabeth II about 50 years ago. That was different from any book that Queen Elizabeth had written about her, and I would argue different in a way than any book that had ever been written about a sitting monarch. It's very assessing. It's not really gotcha journalism. It's not really that, but it is very real-world assessing. There's no huge amount of emphasis put on the classic quote of letting the magic in, letting light in on the magic. There's nothing like that. Instead, this is, how much does the Queen own? How much money is she worth? In a pinch, how much money, how much cash could she raise without asking Parliament? And speaking of Parliament, how much power does she have? What power does she actually have in the British government? And when we're talking, this is also David Her biography, and when we're talking about a biography, well, what do we know? And how do we know it? From what documents? And if we're looking at original documents at, for instance, any thought of King Edward's collusion with the Nazis, when we're looking at those original documents, do we have a record of how much access the royal family had to those documents before anyone saw them in their current form? And so on and so forth. So it's pretty invigorating. It's a pretty invigorating book. It caused a lot of... it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when it first came out. Again, about 50 years ago. When it first came out, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including, for the first couple of chapters, me. And then I realized, okay, well, no, the reason this is rubbing you the wrong way is because he's not adopting that noblesse oblige type attitude, and that's probably healthy. I don't, at the moment, have a copy of Majesty, but it had an extremely healthy print run, both in hardcover and then 10 times over in paperback. So a copy will show up at the Brattle Bookshop. I'm not worried about that. And I have plenty of other Queen Elizabeth biographies, including some that are very good. Just nothing quite like this in tone. Okay, then we have a galley copy. This was a long time ago. It was before I got back into book reviewing. I still got galley copies from publishers. You never really get off the list for some people. But this is by Nami Mun, and it's called Miles from Nowhere. And it's an 80s novel about a runaway girl who, once she leaves the structures of familiarity and protection in her world, no matter how repressive those structures are, once she leaves those structures and goes onto the street, she encounters a whole nother world. And it was a prominent theme in fiction of the time because it was true. There was that world. I knew parts of that world quite well, both in Boston and in Manhattan. And that world, as far as I know, doesn't exist in anything like this form anymore. So to the extent where you might not even be clear on what I'm talking about, New York has now been airbrushed. I mean, look at that. The city has now been airbrushed into a playground for the super rich. that is absolutely true. Crime might be inching up in a few places, but it is still historically low in New York City. I was there. The last time I was in New York was 7 years ago, I think, thereabouts, 7 years ago. And I noticed it right away. I noticed a different feel right away, that it would have been possible to go to, I don't know, it would have been theoretically possible to go to a bar around the World Trade Center. It theoretically possible because the bare minimum, the cover just to get in would be $100, but who knows what your total would be when you were done. But it would be possible to go to a bar in that district in lower Manhattan, and then when you're done at 2 or 3 in the morning, walk in spring weather all the way up to the Upper West Side without ever being in the slightest bit of physical danger. The world that is captured in this book, that would be an utter fantasy, a utopian fantasy. And so, I'd be curious to read this again and see what aspects of that world. I'm sure that the author had no idea that she was writing a time capsule of a book. Okay, then this next one I had as an old mass market paperback. It had yellowed, discolored pages. Oh no, was I blocking the bean that whole time? I was. Oh no, can't have that. This next was an author that I really love, Nicholas Montserrat, and this was a little mass market called Montserrat At Sea. That's half memoir and then half stories, half fiction, but all about the naval experience in World War II, and he's terrific at writing about that. So, the memoir part of this book, I don't think I've ever seen this as a hardcover at the Brattle. I will. Sooner or later I will. But if I remember correctly, the memoir part of the book not a whole lot happens. It's not freighted and fraught for action the way, his novels are. You see the contrast even in this volume, because some of the stories do have action in a way that his memoir does not. His memoir is scrupulously truthful. But he's still a terrific writer, an amazing capturer of personalities. Okay, all right, well, we're going to move on from terrific writing. We're going to move on to, this is Jeffrey Convitz. I know nothing about this author. And this is called Monster, A Tale of Loch Ness. This is a thriller, as you can see. That was a step-back cover. If you opened the cover, you would have seen a full-page illustration. I'm a little bit kicking myself that if I scanned this cover, I don't think I scanned the step back. I don't think it ever occurred to me to do that. Probably because when I was scanning the cover, it never occurred to me that I would get rid of the book. But I did. We saw Steve Alton's The Lock at one point or another in this endless discussion of books that we do on this channel. And this is just a much earlier version of that, where someone is digging for oil in Loch Ness. They're digging for oil in Loch Ness. And they encounter something that sure seems like a monster, but is it? Or is the worst monster mankind? You'd think, all right, well, if you're that tinny and predictable, at least you can compensate with great action sequences and some interesting characters. No, not in this particular case. You can't. So I didn't keep this book, and I can't lament that fact. But I should look online and see if somebody ever did scan the actual illustration for the step back, because I'd be interested to see. I can't quite remember if there's a fluke in it of some kind. I don't know. But anyway, that's the Library of the Lost for today. We'll continue on with these for a while. I realize I can't do the Library of the Lost indefinitely, so I'll continue with these while I figure out and deal with the little book room. And then we will commence the library tour somewhere else, somewhere in a physical room. But for that's in the future. We have quite a few gone and forgotten books to go through first. So I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.